Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Redefining Society. Oh, yeah, now is End Technology podcast. I felt that I needed to be more clear, especially for the search engine, because that's all we talk about. But I decided to focus on society, and apparently people always look for the word technology. So I just implemented there. If you're looking at the video, you can see that the title is up there. If you're listening, the show, it's now Redefining Society and Technology podcast. And as you know, it's one way and then it's the other. So how society influences technology and how technology is influence society. I hope that society has a little bit more to say than the technology itself, but that's up for conversation. That's what we talk about. And today, of course, it's a new episode with my friend, Dr. Bruce Y. Lee, and his other good friend at this point, the garlic in the background. And we're going to talk about a few things that we started to seed, let's say, on the other episode, the one before where we were talking about transhumanism, because I just finished reading The Singularity is Near by Ray Kurzweil, and it raised a lot of questions. So I have an outline for what they can be the next 3 episodes, and we picked one of the 3, and I'll let you know which one it is after I welcome Bruce to the show. Welcome.
Thanks, Marco. Always great to be here.
Hi, and my friend, have you.
Or friend over this side.
So same expression for the garlic, doesn't change much?
Yeah, well, he changes his expression off camera. So, sometimes it's a smile, sometimes. But, whenever you talk about society and technology, there can be some great things and there can be some questionable things. So technology, as we've always said, is neither good nor bad by itself. It's actually how you use it. So.
Correct. And you know what I like about that garlic? I just thought about it. Now, it has that surprise face that you don't really know if he's surprised excited or surprised shocked. Mm-hmm. It can go both. It can go both ways. So we'll see where we go with this conversation today.
Yep.
It's
shocked or excited or whatever you want to combine.
I think it says no way.
Yeah.
But it could be like, no way or no way. So we'll see what it says today. So to recap, like I said, we talked about the singularity is near. We talk about healthcare. We talk about human augmentation, of course, transhumanism and digital upload of our life into computers and servers to live forever, assuming that all these things are actually going to come through. And I think that since last time we talked, about a month and a half ago, we've seen already a lot of new things. I mean, we don't get bored in the world of technology. But the big question that I think is going to help us to pick the topic that we're going to dive into today is the question suggested to me by our friend ChatGPT. With the singularity or that gets near the evolution of technology and all the things that are possible or that they will be possible at a societal level, the question is there someone or some part of a society that are standing to gain or to lose compare with someone else? So is it democratic? It's not democratic. Is democratic 51% and 49% are really unhappy? I mean, that's the big question. So I think we should talk about that today. So inequality in the age of singularity and see where we go with that.
Well, if ChatGPT tells us to do something, then we should do it, right?
You don't want to be against it just in case.
No.
Just be nice to ChatGPT. Yeah. So have you had any thought maybe following our prior conversation when we did sprinkle all the three of this topic, but I think the inequality and the democratization of technology, how it rolls into our society, it's always something that, at least for me, from a sociological perspective, it's a question that is always present. Either we talk about internet infrastructure, 5G, even ChatGPT itself, or what level of intelligence are you accessing based off, are you going to get the free one or you're going to pay $20-$30 a month for it? So what's your thought on that?
Well, we've seen this throughout history. Whenever there are innovations or there's new technology or new resources that are available, sometimes, or many times actually, there's been, one group of people who've had access to it. And as a result, they've been able to dominate others or move faster than others. If you look back at history, those who, for instance, were able to develop, move faster on land, were able to capture more land. People who, there's a lot of a number of countries that had sea power. So they were able to use ships, and then using the ships, they were able to travel further to further lands and end up colonizing different places. And that created greater inequities or inequalities, both as a result. And so, but on the flip side, you can take each of those different types of technologies or innovations and say, but here's how it helped everyone. So if you think about it, let's take, for example, sea power, being able to, use ships. Well, yes, at the beginning, there were certain countries and certain governments that had those type of navies, those type of merchant fleets, and then they were able to take advantage of a lot of other societies and places. But now the fact that you have ships moving around, you can ship grains and food to different places, so you can help places that didn't initially have access to those resources. And one of the challenges is you've seen throughout history where maybe initially you have certain people taking advantage of that technological advantage, but then eventually people realize, wait, hold on a second. This actually is causing problems in society. And then people start realizing, hey, we're actually connected. And then that's when you start seeing things equal out many times. Another example is the control of infectious diseases. So if you actually look at military history, infectious diseases many times was actually the victor. They were actually the victor. They helped one side defeat the other side, because the other side, developed smallpox or what have you. This is one of the issues that happened in the Americas when you had people, settlers coming over to the Americas. So, but then the realization came that you need to, these are threats. As long as these infectious disease threats are a threat to some people, it's a threat to everyone. And therefore, there's benefits in establishing broader infection control measures, ultimately like vaccines, but at the beginning, different types of measures and care to prevent the damage or impact and the spread of these different types of diseases. So this is not new in society, this concept. So we always have to be careful whenever there's new technologies of how is it going to disrupt society in a way that's actually bad, that's actually causing inequities, leaving certain people behind? And then how is that actually going to come back and hurt everyone? So that's important to keep in mind.
And you know what? One of the things that I hear a lot is when technology is new, is usually more expensive, and in general. So that the first one that then develop certain kind of technology and adopt it in large scale are usually the richest nation in this case, or the one that have a really big interest in conquering, in this case, to go in America. We got the gun, you don't, and then they find out that they also have a very dark superpower, which is bringing bacteria and and diseases that did help. Because you wonder, how is that 100 of Cortez men got rid of thousands and thousands of Mayan? That's a big question. But when it comes to the modern world, many times the new iPhones, for example, they were super expensive. Then somebody adopted, put it on scale, and now everybody has it. But if you want the good ones, you still have to pay more than the cheaper ones. So there is always the first cost of things that some people may be able to afford or not. And oftentimes they say, well, we're just biting the bullet for all of you, right? We buy it, we see how it goes, and then if it works, we give it to you. But I think maybe it works if it's a visor for virtual reality or a smartphone. But when it comes to healthcare, I'm not so sure that the richest should have access to that earlier. You can use as many SKUs as you want, but I don't think ethically it's correct.
And we've seen it recently with social media, for example. So social media, there were, kind of basically the people who built the initial social media platforms and then the early adopters. Those folks were able to dominate social media and dominate also the messages and how social media is actually being used. Yeah. Now, there are people who are coming later to social media, but they may not have control in terms of what's actually being said or presented. So if you think about it, right, you jump on any of these platforms, there are algorithms that are controlling what you actually see. And so it's not all equal opportunity, right? You go onto something and what you're actually presented is based on those algorithms. Well, then who's creating those algorithms? And whoever's controlling those algorithms then controls what kind of information is spread. And therefore, if there's an interest in spreading particular types of messages and those things like that, who has control over that? And so that's a very recent example. And then we can apply that to new technologies like AI. Who's actually devising or designing these algorithms that then determine and say certain things. So.
Yep, and according to George Orwell, 1984, if you control information, you kind of control everything. You control society. Yep. So that's a really good point. And one can wonder what would have been the algorithm if someone else maybe found out earlier. Like, who is that control? Is it the Communist Party in China? Is it the Nazi in Germany, or the rich people in the United States or another advanced country? I mean, I'm not taking political position here. I'm just saying whomever has control is going to drive his own agenda. Therefore, the algorithm is going to do the things that matter the most to them. Do you see something in a probably dystopian vision of society that could happen in healthcare?
Oh yeah, there's been a lot of conversations and concerns about that. So the studies have already shown that there are great disparities in terms of access to healthcare, and also, someone walks in to a clinic, and there can be a great range in terms of what types of treatments they received, or how they're treated, or how they're evaluated, or how they're diagnosed. That's been known for a long time, and so there are already existing disparities in terms of that. Now, with technology, the question is, will technology help alleviate some of this and decrease some of the disparities, or worsen it? You might have, if you are extremely advantaged, well, you have access to certain latest and greatest therapies or modalities, whereas someone else might not. That's a big question. And so with technology, it's neither good nor bad. If it's stationed appropriately, then it can help alleviate those disparities. If not, then it can actually worsen those disparities. There have been someone told me about plugging in things into ChatGPT, for instance, and asking questions like, okay, what are the treatments for breast cancer or something like that? And then try putting in, like, I am a certain ethnic group, what are the treatments? And that person got back fewer options versus the first attempt.
I didn't
So
know
by
that.
actually identifying a certain ethnic group, then you actually get less options. And you have to ask yourself, well, why is that the case? Well, ChatGPT is based on the corpus of information that's out there. And if you make something more specific or something, a group that's not as well studied or there aren't as much data on, then you're going to get less information. So you're talking about there's already a situation where depending on who you are, you might actually get different information from something that's supposed to provide, an AI-driven tool that's supposed to provide information. And we know why. We know why that's the case. Because there's a lot more data on certain groups, certain demographic groups than others. And that's an example of further exacerbating the disparities that exist there.
I didn't think that way, but yeah, it makes total. I mean, I didn't think that way because I didn't actually do that. Although I normally try to make it, if I use ChatGPT, very specific. If I'm looking for information for myself, I'm like, we're talking about me here. So what are my options? And one interesting thing, for example, is you talk about the disparity in the cultural or the social demographic, but also, for example, where are you? Like, for example, I actually experienced this. I was in Italy. I was dealing with family member that he was going through something, and I used ChatGPT as my doctor just to learn certain things, and he proposed one thing that then I ended up talking to the primary doctor in the department at the hospital, and I said, how about this? And he said, where did you find that? And I said, well, ChatGPT. And he said, well, we don't do that in Italy here. It was an alternative procedure that is like, yeah, I heard of it, but we don't do this here. So it kind of follows. There are many different angles that comes into place and perspectives when you look at these things.
Yeah.
And they are intrinsic to our society. So I'm not saying ChatGPT created this. It's just hereditary. It's hereditary from the way our society are structured.
Yeah, if there are already certain biases, and this reflects the biases that exist in the corpus of the internet right now, right? Because we know that the way these algorithms are developed is you at least in case of ChatGPT, you have the corpus of information that's available on the internet, and it basically learns from that. If something's repeated over and over again, whether it's true or not, it's going to appear in the answer. Mm-hmm. So in theory, if you said, if you had enough time to publish tons of articles on why covering yourself in chocolate is a good thing, and you just repeat over and over again, at some point it's going to be picked up. And you can look up in the AI and say, what should I do? It'll say, have you considered covering yourself in chocolate? Something like that. So that's basically what it comes from. It's not like, it's interesting because people, especially with these interfaces now, you get the feeling that there's someone smart telling you what to do, right? So you log on and you ask a question. It feels like there's someone, quote unquote, smart with lots of information telling you what to do. But you have to realize that just like a person, that thing may have lots of biases, and you don't think about it because it just, you think, oh, it's tech, therefore it shouldn't have biases, but it does. Yeah. And it's not, this tech does not have a medical degree. This tech does not have a law degree. It's just saying, this is what I see everyone else saying. Yep. And it's not everyone else, it's certain people saying.
Yep, and especially when it doesn't even think, but it's just putting together probability, and well, in a way, it does think, but let's not get in the detail of it. But the point is more like a parrot right now. It may be more conscious in the future, but right now it's more parroting whatever it's being fed. Yep. So let's take AI from away, right? So not that we can. Let's take generative AI away. Let's keep AI. AI is used in medicine, has been used in medicine for a while, way before ChatGPT. It's been used in many other fields. It works, especially when you have a tunnel task that could be looking at X-ray, looking at specific things, and it can ingest and digest way more data than what we can as human in a much shorter amount of time. That's how we create new vaccines so much faster now. We can run tests without having to actually test people, simulation, and I know this is your field.
Mm-hmm.
When a company, a pharmaceutical company, when a hospital decide to invest into something, do you think that it come into consideration the inequality in the population? I mean, how do they pick something versus another? Is that ethical? I don't know. I don't even know if you have the answer, but.
So you mean like basically, they choose some type of technology like a medication or something like that to further
focus billions of dollars into developing the treatment for something versus something else. I mean, it's a pandemic, sure. I mean, that's shit for everybody. So, but in other things, developing machinery, robotics, I don't know, anything that.
Yeah. So I was. In a previous life, work in equity research, which is basically, when you work for an investment bank and you value a company, part of what you try to do. So I covered biotech companies. You look at their technology, in this case, many times medications, and then you look at like the market size, the potential market size, and then you look at the risk. How likely is this technology, this medication, to reach the market? And that's where a lot of the decisions are made. So, you put together a spreadsheet and say, okay, ideally you want the largest market possible, you want the fewest competitors as possible, and you want the lowest development risk. And that leads to a positive financial decision. And that's how many of the decisions are made. So if you notice, equity does not necessarily play a role. I mean, it may play a role in terms of the sheer number of people. So like if something's very common, a disease that's very common, then that's likely to be kind of a larger market. But it doesn't really play a role in a lot of those financial decisions in terms of, whether it's a good product to go with to further develop. And that's a problem, but also you have to think about, well, why are these decisions made? Well, if you look at a pharmaceutical company, they've got shareholders, they've got their stock price, they've got the profit margins that they have to achieve and those type of things, and they're being watched carefully by all their shareholders and say, oh, why did they acquire that drug? Why did they out-license that drug? Why are they developing this and that? So that drives a lot of their decision making many times.
Is it making me money or not?
I'm sorry?
It's making money or not?
Yeah, basically.
I mean, that is the bottom line.
The other issue is that over time, things which drive equity or things that help all of society actually in the long run may make more money. But in the short run, it may not, right? So many times companies these days are thinking very short term. What's going to give biggest cash infusion or the biggest profits as soon as possible. So that's the disconnect many times.
So here's another question then. This is when we let the market decide. And the market, let's face it, doesn't care much about ethics. It cares about money, right? I mean, I'm not saying we're going to produce atomic bombs because somebody's going to step in and eventually say no, although I'm sure much money has been, bless you, much money has been making on atomic bombs anyway, or weapons and all of that. But if if you have a situation where the decisions are driven by a healthcare system that is national healthcare system, so I'm thinking Italy, the UK, France, whatever, is that more ethical in your opinion, or is still money driven, because no matter what, even the party at the power is somehow having to show that they're not throwing money away and that there is an investment in that?
Well, I think one of the challenges is there might be the belief that a lot of things are market driven right now, but they aren't, right? I mean, I think one of the challenges in healthcare is there are a lot of middle people that are involved that then throw off market dynamics, and sometimes that can actually impede the adoption of technology. There are some technologies that were developed a long time ago, but people kind of pushed against it because it would be a threat to their bottom line or their situation. There's functions in medicine, for instance, that could potentially be replaced by technology, but if the people don't want to be replaced, or they're worried about their being replaced, they're going to push back against it. Also, we talk about pharmaceutical companies, et cetera. They're not solely looking at directly who's going to buy it and these things like that. They're looking at stock price. So it's the investors that play a role. So you don't have a clean market, meaning that you don't have a direct, years ago, markets were simple.
Yeah.
So if you were hungry and I came along and I say, hey, here's a bunch of hammers. Would you like to buy a hammer? Unless you eat hammers, you'd be like, go away. I don't need you. Mm-hmm. Until I came back and say, here's a bunch of avocados. And you say, okay, I'll pay you. So therefore, I am meeting your need. You're paying me as a result. That's when the market works, right? You have a need. I'm producing something that's useful, et cetera. But the problem is the market has gotten so complex with healthcare, with insurance companies, with pharmacy management companies, all these other things, so that you're really separated. Supply and demand are really separated in many ways. And that's one of the challenges. And that's what's prevented in many times the diffusion of technology in healthcare. And it's also prevented more equitable situations as a result. Right.
How about the new technologies? So when we talk about transhumanism and getting into a higher advanced technology, we can talk about the CRISPR, the nanotechnology, neural interfaces, genetics, and all of that, which may, as we talked in the first episode related to this, extend life to many years, but also resolve issues before they even arise. And I want to touch on this. I know it actually could be something for another episode, but for human augmentation. But I think there is an angle. There's always an angle about inequality anyway. So how is this going, you think, to apply when we talk about technology that are there right now? Like, I give you an example. Like, I read about all this new technology. It's very hard, even for me, that I talk about it all the time, to understand if it's, wait a minute, is it going to be available, or is there but not available? When the regular Joe is going to get advantage of it? Because I know that CRISPR technology is extremely expensive, so it's probably just going to be used for some. So what's the dynamic for things to come? And it's kind of like an autonomous car. They're kind of there, but we don't see them around because there's policies and stuff right? So.
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the challenges is that when healthcare related technology is available, then, one of the interests is in quickly recouping a lot of the R&D costs. And then on top of that, expecting a certain profit margin because, you spent years not making profits, and then you want to make a lot of profit. So then as a result, the technology is priced very high. So it becomes, and then the other challenge is in many cases, it's not a straight market, right? So it's not like someone's putting up a CRISPR lemonade stand and people are walking by and like saying, oh, I'll have one of those. It's the insurance has to decide, well, we actually cover it. And insurance will cover it based on how much pressure there is to cover it and who's pressuring it, all those different things. And then different people have different types of insurance. And so there's different levels of insurance. You might have great insurance or terrible insurance that doesn't cover things. So it's so complex in that way. So undoubtedly, that's going to initially create a lot of inequalities in terms of who can actually get it. So certainly, if you can afford to, say you've got billions of dollars laying around and you say, well, money's no object, I want access to this, you just pay it directly, you're going to be first in line. If you are in a situation where, okay, you may have some money and your insurance will cover it to some degree, but you still have to pay, then that's a decision you have to make. And then if you don't have enough money and your insurance doesn't cover it, then you're out of luck. Unless someone, you start a GoFundMe or someone else comes along and says, hey, I'm going to buy that for you. So that's the problem. You may not have access. Again, it's based on the resources that you have, or it's based on who you might be connected with. So yeah, there are all these built-in mechanisms already that make access to technology, health technology, unequal.
Is technology, though, as we mentioned earlier about a smartphone or any other technology, like something that cost a lot of money at the beginning? I mean, even television, right? I mean, TV, they were like, oh, 4K, it's super expensive, thousands of dollars. Now they just want to throw it at you and pay whenever you can. So because you get to the point that is economical enough to have a model where it's not by the quality but by the quantity. So you want more people to buy it, and then eventually everybody can get it. Same thing as I said, smartphone. So technology allows new things to happen and also allows to lower cost in the longer run.
Yep.
Is that happening exponentially in healthcare as well? Because when you look at, and I just see what I see here and there, but sometimes there are this medication that come out and it's like, yeah, this is $10,000 a pop, and I'm still surprised, to be honest with you, when I see the bill that the insurance pay compared with what I pay not insurers in Italy, but that's a different story. Like I can see my insulin, for example. Like if I need insulin in Italy, I'm like, yep, I'll pay for it because it's $50 what it would cost me $600 here. So the point is, beside politics, can we imagine maybe a world where technology is going to get so good with AI and everything else that maybe we don't need these labels with those big price tags on medications?
You mean technology helping?
Yeah, technology helping to really make medications and any medical devices and all of that much more affordable, because it becomes a scale economy instead of something that only few people can afford.
Yeah, I mean, there's real opportunity for technology to significantly decrease R&D costs and to significantly decrease the timeline. So those are the arguments for several things. That, it takes so much time and effort to develop these drugs, therefore we can afford to pay all these, charge prices with premiums to kind of recoup a lot of that investment. Right. And also that there's that argument, look, we invested in all this for all this long time, therefore we should have an exclusive patent for X number of years before other people can compete in this. So there is the opportunity that if you have technology to help facilitate the development of these things, making them easier and quicker, then yes, that could certainly ultimately bring down costs. So, one example is technology to identify drug targets. So you say, okay, many times you have a situation where you identify what's gone wrong with a certain condition, what enzyme is not working, what kind of body part is breaking down, what have you. And you say, okay, we know the pathways for this. Can we find some type of, or develop some type of medication that can then act at this pathway? What we used to do is it was trial and error, right? You try different things, you try it in the lab and see what happens, or you might accidentally find something. Like that's how antibiotics were found, right? Antibiotics were found because some mold grew in like one of the dishes, and they're like, hey, that's actually getting rid of a lot of the bacteria there.
Yeah.
Pure, happenstance. So with technology, that can become a lot more organized and say, okay, rather than like trying like 3 things at a time, 4 things at a time, you can try like 100 things, 1,000 things in silico. Like you can do it in a way with a computer that you can't nearly do as fast with humans. Yeah. So that could save. Then there's sort of the adjusting of the medication. There's a lot of adjustments that have to occur. Once you find a target, you still have to adjust things. Computers could help with that. AI could help with that. It could help better design clinical trials. Maybe someday we'll be able to do more virtual clinical trials where you have a virtual human where you can try different things, and that can sort of either go along or supplement, or in some cases, surpass what you do in humans. There's all those possibilities. And when you can accelerate drug discovery and drug development, you can also ultimately reduce the cost as well.
Yeah, I was reading something about that actually, where, I think it was connected still to the vaccine development, where regular vaccine will take 10 years or so because you have to test it, then get permission, test it to a larger amount of people, and how. And that's what the skepticism of a lot of people, like, how did you develop the COVID vaccine in no time, right? Yeah. It's not possible. That's sorcery right there. Yep. But it's because you can actually simulate a lot of things, and probably actually simulate even on a more diverse range of subjects compared with what you would pick to test. I don't know, 100,000 of people to see if it actually works or not.
Oh, absolutely. If you look at clinical trials, and studies have shown this, clinical trials tend to be a select population, and it's not a diverse population.
Yep.
So if you think about it, like to be able part of a clinical trial, many times you have to be comfortable enough financially that you can take the time to be in a clinical trial. If someone who's just struggling to make ends meet, like you have to go to the hospital many times to get tested and all these things like that. So not everyone can afford it. The clinical trial will pay you some money, but it's not enough to really just, to completely compensate for all your hassles and work loss and those things like that. But if you could simulate a wide range of different types of people, that could be something very different.
Yeah, well, lot to think about. So also,
the other thing, it also, when it comes to, you probably see all these big pharmaceutical companies. They're huge. They have all these big offices, and they have a lot of infrastructure, because it takes a lot of time and effort to set up laboratories and running clinical trials and those things like that. If you can do that with a lot less resources, a lot fewer resources, that may allow more people to enter the market, more competitors to enter the market. And then that in turn can also drive innovation and also reduce costs as well. So lots of possibilities.
Lots of possibilities. And I think it came out from this conversation that yes, there are certainly inequality, but just because there are inequality, period, it's not. I don't want to pinpoint or point the finger to technology creating inequality. I'm not on that side of the street. No. I'm more on the side of yes, it's like social engineering. right? Social engineering always existed, except that now with technology, you can create it at scale. With AI, you can create social engineering on email way faster than what it used to be to write a letter of the Spanish prisoner and send it to someone hoping that he's going to give them money. So it's a matter of scalability, not a matter of it's creating a problem. It's just making it more popular, I think.
Yep.
So, well, that was fun. I think next time we can touch on the other things that we mentioned, and I'm particularly interested in getting your opinion and my opinion, because I think about it, but I never really get much deep into that by myself, into uploading our life into computers. I mean, you hear now, and I'm just going to throw a teaser there of people getting married to artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
Being actually very loyal, and now with the robotics, that become an entire different thing, but establishing relationship with them, and so what if sometimes I wonder it's not an artificial intelligence, but actually is the product of somebody's brain and spiritual mind that actually goes online, and people can become friends with them and so forth. So I think there is a lot of ethical perspective there to look at, and assuming the feasibility of it as well. Because I always think, like, you spend a lot of money to put your brain online, and then what if there's a blackout and everything goes right? So that may be a way to avoid that, but who the hell knows? So if you're up to that, I think next time we can touch on this even more sci-fi. I mean, what we talked about today, I think, is very real, and I want to thank you for kind of helping to shed some lights on that. And we did talk at the beginning, A Candle in the Dark, and Carl Sagan, and how science, it's not perfect, and I think we just proved it today. It's not perfect, but it's a lot more perfect than pseudoscience and other gullible things.
Yep. Well, as a teaser, I wrote a Forbes article about, I don't know, now it's been about 7 or 8 years ago, on AI sex bots, and I'm going to explain that during the next episode.
Can't wait for that. If you want to put a link to that so people are prepared, or just reveal it when we talk next time. I'm looking forward to that. The garlic just got even more concerned right now that you said that.
Or excited.
or excited. Maybe it has some relationship with the sex bot. But now I want to thank you again. It was always great to chat with you and spend 43 minutes. And I want to thank everybody for listening. Stay tuned for another episode of Carbon, a Silicon, and a Cell Walk into a Bar. And to that, we add a garlic as well. And Bruce and everybody else, thank you so much. Stay tuned, subscribe, and we'll talk soon, very soon again.